But I will say from FSU side, this is something that was constructed, that was put together for months now, just in case this type of situation happened. And this is not the only kind of package, from what I've been told, that is prepared for other players, that Florida State has put themselves in the right spot on building relationships. And Mims is definitely your high profile guy. And so they've set up a very nice package that I think, the relationships are already there. I don't think FSU is too worried about that. Just maybe some extra incentives on the side to help nowadays with an NIL. That just bodes even better for you.
Hey guys, it's Terrence Mann. You're listening to Hear the Spear, presented by Noel Game Day. Go Noles.
Hey, what's up? This is Peter Ward, a.k.a. E-Dub, in the house. So we're listening to Hear the Spear, presented by Noel Game Day. Go Live, go Noles.
Hi, this is Charlie Ward, and you're listening to Hear the Spear, Go Noles.
This is Terrell Buckley. You're listening to Hear the Spear, presented by Noel Game Day. No Bloody.
But perhaps better known as the greatest corner to ever step on a football field, Deion Primetime Sanders.
Great Deion Sanders, my brother. What's going on, man? I could wake up to that greeting every day, man. That was awesome.
Hello, Noles fans. This is former Seminole Derek Brooks, and you're listening to Hear the Spear, presented to you by Noel Game Day.
James Wilder Jr. What's going on, James?
Thanks for having me on. SSOD, Florida State or Die, and go Noles.
William Bar None Floyd.
Gentlemen, what's up?
What is happening, guys? This is Logan Robinson from Hear the Spear, presented to you by NoelGameDay.com. We are here on a very fun, exciting, and drama-filled Thursday night here in Tallahassee after some crazy, wild things happening. You even have Dustin leaving the daytime job to go do some work at the Morrison out there. Might be out there again tomorrow. Got some things going on here to discuss. Also, we've got a spring game to recap. Maybe we'll jump into our overall thoughts of the spring. Also, recruiting after Florida State had a big-time recruiting weekend during the spring game. So we will jump into that after we talk to a lot of recruits and got their takeaways, including the number one player in the 2024 class and the number one quarterback in the 2024 class. And then we'll jump into some basketball, quick hitters, some guys in the NBA heading into playoffs, some former Noles, and Austin will give us the latest on that, along with some transfer news too, which is a big deal for Leonard Hamilton and the staff as they are jumping big time this cycle, it seems like, into the transfer portal. So, talk Amarius Smith. We'll talk about Amarius Smith. Brought up the show with me this evening is
dude, never heard of him.
Never heard of him. Dustin Lewis, lead writer and editor. We've got Austin Veazey at the top right, lead basketball writer, and then Nate Greer, bottom right, back with us, lead recruiting insider. Gentlemen, what a fun last. Well, now getting close to 24 hours.
It's been a doozy, man. I tell you, I feel like social media and the Discord and everything is just moving like a 1,000 miles a second. Can never be caught up. I just feel like head's been going all day. But I'm happy to be here with you guys. I guess all things considered.
I guess. Wow, thanks, Dilo. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks a lot for that. I appreciate it. It's been wild. Nate, how was your break from us last week? Good to have you back.
Yeah, man, I hope things went well. I mean, duty called. I had to be at work, so.
Yep.
But it's good to be back, man, bring some livelihood to this, podcast.
Let me tell you, you sound very energetic tonight.
I was about to say.
I was watching something on TV, so. No, it's good to be back. Good to be back. Yeah, there we go. Yeah.
Oh my Jesus, this is not good. This is not good. But yeah, this is good stuff. We've got a lot to talk about this evening. Before we get started, everybody hit that like button if you're on YouTube. Subscribe. We won't hold a gun to your head to do that, but we definitely would appreciate it. Also, make sure that you subscribe on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify. For all of you audio people, I know we'll have a lot of YouTube viewers this evening. But if you're on iTunes and all those other platforms, make sure you hit that like or hit that subscribe button so then you get notified every time we release a new episode. Let's get straight to it because that's what everybody's here, just like Louis T says here.
Get to the point. I like it.
We've got to get to the point. But then he said earlier he better be committed by the time this comes up or y'all are going to look stupid. I hate to tell you that, but we're not that outlet. We're not that outlet. We're not that outlet. We're not going to name that outlet. We don't want to give the viewers some send them their way, but we're not going to bring up that outlet. But yes, let's start talking to Amarius Mims. So we got word yesterday, or I was getting word early on in the morning that Amarius Mims would be meeting in Tallahassee, not necessarily on Florida State's campus, but meeting with Florida State's, or not really Florida State's, but the Rising Spear NIL program. And that was a dinner set up. There was a presentation set up. We saw a couple other outlets at that hotel taking shots and videos. We weren't, going a little that way far with it, but, got to see that actually come through. I know. You wanted to go there? Or would you have gone and stayed in that hotel and just been like a full-on stalker?
I mean, whatever you got to do to get the views, man.
For your clout chaser?
They got it. I wish I would have been there to get it. I'll tell you that.
What's the dividend? What's the payoff, though?
They broke that he was here before anybody else, and they got him arriving, and the coach is greeting him. So, pretty cool moment.
That's great, but it doesn't pay off in the long run when it makes people pissed off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we'll get to that. But yeah, a presentation with the NIL group called Rising Spear, we actually had an interview with them earlier last week for all you podcast listeners. That's going to be shared over the weekend for you guys, which just will fit perfectly with this Amarius Mims visit. But whole family's here. We got to see them in person arrive at Doak Campbell Stadium this morning. Got to see dad, mom, I believe some siblings, and I believe a friend of Amarius is here. I'm not necessarily sure if that is his brother or not, but I believe his sister's here. So a lot of his family are in town to visit. This is by far the number one transfer in the country right now. And Nate, I'd probably give it to you, D-Lou, too, but just going back really to show the listeners, the relationship with Florida State during his recruitment, which he ended up picking Georgia. Florida State was really high up there, and they built that relationship very well. You got to look at Coach Atkins, and I think Norvell really two hands on here also. Those two really key connected, and Coach Atkins, near the end of his recruitment, I think Mims, said it multiple times. That's a coach that I'm always going to stay in contact no matter where I go. Mm-hmm. And look now where this has opened up a door for Florida State to possibly land one of the top transfers in the country, but probably the most important, your biggest need, and that's a tackle with a very high upside. And you're looking at a guy that has 6'7", 330 pounds, who also looks really good in person. I will say that.
Is that a 7'1" wingspan?
Who can be a starter immediately for you and end up being a possible NFL product in the first, second round guy. This is a very talented offensive lineman coming in. But just maybe relay back to going through that recruitment with Mims and Florida State.
You want to go first, Dustin?
I can. Really it came down to Florida State and in-state Georgia, obviously, and the main sticking point for FSU was that relationship with Alex Atkins. It really seemed like that was the position coach, one of the position coaches across the country, that he had really developed a relationship, someone that he could trust. And even when Mims committed to Georgia during the fall of 2020, leading up to early signing day, Atkins continued to stay in contact with him, doing what he can, just continued to foster that relationship. And like you said, Logan, now you see it pay off with him entering the transfer portal, Florida State getting that first visit and maybe the final visit. We'll see how it works out over the next couple of days, but I'm sure the staff doesn't want him to leave Tallahassee without some sort of commitment in hand.
If you really look back at it, Coach Atkins has been recruiting Mims since he was at UNC Charlotte. So when you have a 3 year relationship that they've had, I think coming over to FSU, Mims had an opportunity to play on the big stage with Atkins, but Georgia was always probably going to be the team that he always ended up with. But Florida State, Norvell, like you said, Logan Atkins, they did a really great job in his recruitment. The one thing that Atkins always does is that he's very honest with these kids, and he tells them, this is what you do well, this is what you need to work on. If you want to play at this level, this is what I need from you, and this is what you expect from me. And a lot of times, that's it with football. It's more about building a personal relationship, and this is it. It's okay to finish second sometimes. Now, I think someone put that out there, and I'll repeat that. It's a good point. Unfortunately, the transfer portal is here to stay, but it's a benefit if you are a finalist with the recruitment. It's a benefit if you have a great relationship with the player, because it's not always, as we've seen on both sides of the coin for FSU. Another kid two kids enter the portal today from FSU. It doesn't always work out, but for FSU to keep that relationship going, Atkins stayed in contact with them as more of a figure in his life. It bodes well. And you get a kid, like you said, Logan, that, exponentially improves the tackle room if he comes like everyone expects. And you get a 2-year starter that has, day one, top 15, top 25 potential. And, make no bones about it. Kirby Smart, George is not happy he left. I know there's been a couple of people talking about, why is FSU pursuing a guy who, George is not trying to keep? Don't get it twisted. They're trying to keep him. But, the kids decided to move on and try another program. And, it's looking like right now Florida State's going to be the benefactor of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think the staff is definitely very optimistic. And I think first off the bat was because of the relationship, like we've been talking about with Atkins and Norvell. And then now you've got to compete. You've got to stay on the good side and stay ahead of competition on the NIL part of things. And that's something where Rising Spear, since the last time I've had in-person meetings with them, I've seen major growth. And we've seen a team now actually build instead of two guys that obviously know how to do what they're doing in networking and build and raise money. But now you're starting to build a team around it to where it favors you and building a brand, grabbing ambassadors, social media help, which is big time for both, not just getting awareness, but building more revenue. That's the thing that Rising Spear was lacking all last year. But now from what I've been told, the presentation that they put together for Amarius is something very substantial that not only it just affects him, but as a player and a family. This is something that even, we know the Travis Hunter, we understand all of that. That was going to be the hardest thing, no matter what, for almost any college to combat with what he got supposedly from, who and everything that went down there. But I will say from FSU side, this is something that was constructed, that was put together for months now, just in case this type of situation happened. And this is not the only kind of package, from what I've been told, that is prepared for other players, that Florida State has put themselves in the right spot on building relationships. And Mims is definitely your high profile guy. And so they've set up a very nice package that I think, the relationships are already there. I don't think FSU is too worried about that. Just maybe some extra incentives on the side to help nowadays with an NIL. That just bodes even better for you. And what I was told, the visit is supposed to last multiple days. As we do know, I'm expecting him still to be here. He'll be waking up here in Tallahassee tomorrow. I was told there's a photo shoot happening tomorrow. It's going in plan. I know there's an event happening tonight with a few things. I don't want to go too into detail, but if you guys are in a Discord, we're throwing continuous updates in there. But event tonight and then an event tomorrow. We'll see if he ends up staying through Saturday. There's Easter weekend also involved. But, there's a lot of things. This visit is definitely jam-packed with activities, not only for Mims, but also along with his family members that are here in town.
And I think it's been done that way for a reason. They're putting a lot on that schedule today, tomorrow, and maybe into Saturday. We'll see for a reason. And that's, we've all heard the rumors about Miami trying to get Mims down to campus, and there's been some different reports and whatnot. Florida State, I think they're trying to do everything they can to maximize the amount of time that him and his family are here to lock something down before he does eventually decide to depart from Tallahassee, whether that's to another school or to head back home to Georgia.
I don't think like Logan, we're all burnt from Travis Hunter, me in particular, because I think I was his number one fan. But part of this too is not all NIL with this kid. And as I was talking to someone earlier today, they made a great point. And shouting out Steve too, again, like I do once in a while. He made a good point too, is that NIL is important, but getting on the field and getting to the pros is the bigger payoff for this kid. And that's where the Atkins relationship comes in. Florida State offers the most immediate playing time, the best opportunity. And Miami has a good offensive line coach, the 5'3" midget guy. I don't know his name, but I don't think I think Atkins is just as good or maybe better. Plus they got the relationship, but I don't think that. I think as the next couple of weeks unfold, and if this, turns out to what it's maybe looking like it's going to turn into, Florida State, the NIL and the Raising the Spear thing is going to be able to compete, and that's going to be good for Florida State. And like you said, Logan, it's still new. What's it, a year old maybe?
Dude, it's like 5 months old.
5 months old. So they're building their own brand. So, give it time. But right now, they can compete with whatever a Miami or whomever is going to try to entice this kid with.
And if you get a player of this kind of impact, it's also going to encourage fans to go, oh, this can work.
Mm-hmm.
And it'll encourage them to keep donating, which is something FSU and Rising Spear needs too. They need more people just involved and wanting to donate. They just don't really have that right now. You get a player like Mims, it works in two factors.
Mm-hmm. And to your guys' points, real quick, Rising Spear actually tweeted 18 minutes ago that they're up to 785 donors, and on Monday they had put out a tweet that they were at 355. So really, you've doubled in
love to see
about
it.
2.5, 3 days.
You get Mims, it's going to double again. They'll be well over 1,000 easily.
And just remember, the Garnet membership is a tax deductible charity donation type of fund. So that one, it not only benefits what Rising Spear is trying to do, it benefits the donors themselves and it being tax deductible at the end of the year.
Yeah, well, if you look at this too, Florida State is just, like we said multiple times, just getting started on this. But we are going to share an episode over the weekend. You guys will get double episodes this week. We have a full about 30-minute episode. Me and Dustin hopped on with representative from Rising Spear and had a really good discussion about all of this. So I think it will connect perfectly with kind of understanding what Rising Spear is wanting to do and how this will maybe impact Marius Mims. But I think Nate's correct, fully correct on this. I don't think this is a full-on NIL. Let's go test the waters with everyone around the country. Let's even see what Texas is doing. This is something, from what I was told per a really strong source in all of this, he wants to be closer to family. And I'm sorry, going down in South Florida just doesn't seem like you're going to be closer up to Georgia than you are in Tallahassee. And that plays a vital factor. And I think Florida State fans, if this ends up being a guy that lands at FSU, I think fans should be very happy with not Mims picking Florida State, but also Mom. Mom is a big time factor in this. And I think the relationship between her and Coach Atkins has been playing dividends since his recruitment before going to Georgia. And so it's going to continue. Like I said, there's multiple things planned during this visit process for him. We'll see. I've been told the hotel is booked through Saturday. He could stay there, could not, but I know events are planned for tomorrow and also tonight. We'll see. I want to go more, we've kind of already shared all that. How would this affect Florida State's offensive line? Let's just say Mims ends up picking Florida State. What do you do?
One more win for sure.
One more win that impacts
one more win, for sure. I think it's that much of an impact for FSU. You can move. We saw saw it in the spring game. We saw it throughout camp that there's still question marks at tackle. That question mark is definitely put to bed. That allows you to move Robert Scott over to the right side. You can keep Washington at guard, which it seems like they want to do. Gibbons and Mims on the left side. I mean, so you have 2 booking tackles that keeps Travis healthy. Florida State beats Florida last year if Travis doesn't get hurt and they go to a bowl game. So,
yeah, like you said, I think you get a prototypical left tackle who is a legitimately talented player. Didn't get a lot of burn this season at Georgia, but you have to look at how deep they were and him being a true freshman as well. I think if he comes to a team that's in a situation like Florida State, you can pretty much pencil him in there at one of those 2 tackle spots. I know most of his reps at Georgia came on the right side, but really when you look at him, I think his future is on that left side, and it allows you to really give Robert Scott, Darius Washington, Bless Harris a battle for that right tackle spot. Whoever loses, you can try him out inside and see what happens. It's another valuable depth piece. And it just makes that offensive line a little bit more stronger. You feel a little bit more comfortable if someone was to get banged up, because now you're probably pushing someone who already has experience into that backup role instead of a starting role.
Yeah, that's what I was just about to mention. The depth, you get Mims, that the depth is infinitely more better because, like you said, if Washington gets bumped out, he's got tackle flexibility. You still have Bless Harris with tackle flexibility, and you still have guys behind him that are developing in Rodor and Lloyd Willis. So it would finally give this team some depth on the offensive line that we haven't seen in 12, 15 years.
50 years.
Yeah, I think that what we saw this spring. I think Rodor is a guard. Willis took some steps, which is good, but I think that 8 wins would be realistic. The schedule is not. It's not a super tough schedule. There's not a surefire loss as there was a couple of years ago. Clemson even. Florida State gave them a really tough game last year, and I expect that again. Clemson, would be favored for sure, but it's not a surefire, 99% loss. You look at the schedule; it's very manageable this year, and shoring up your offensive line, keeping Jordan Travis healthy, which this team is significantly different.
No, you're good. You're good, Nate.
Yeah, this damn dog.
That's okay. That's okay. Dogs are being dogs.
Yeah, so
excited. They're excited maybe about Mims.
Yeah. Delilah's really pumped up about what can happen with this offensive line. So no, but I think that you get a prototypical left tackle, 6'7", 330, 71-inch.
He looks good, Nate. Like you said, he does look good.
That I was gonna ask Dustin.
You saw him a lot today, Dustin. How'd he look? Like body type wise?
It's impressive.
So I'll say, he's all of the 6'7", and his body not sloppy at all, if that makes sense, for being someone who Georgia is reporting weighing in at 330 pounds. He definitely doesn't look it. And I don't know, he was towering over everybody out there.
Over you?
Yeah.
I did not.
I mean, I didn't get that close to him. I think Coach Norvell was trying to shoo me off. He's not really happy with all the media out there today, but maybe we'll all be in a better mood tomorrow.
Well, it's understandable why Norvell would be pissed off at the media.
Yeah.
All right, moving on.
It's definitely an iffy situation. I do want to get some pictures on here. There's a question on there if someone wants to take that. I do want to get some pictures of.
I think Armella.
There's 3 guys coming. Well, you're hoping Woody comes, but you have 3 in total on the line.
I think how Armella fits into it is that, I've said it for a while. I think Armella's feature is at guard. Just his playing style, how physical he is. I think that his traits bode well for guard, but I think you could look at him being a right tackle as long as Mims is there. He does have position versatility, but you could put Mims and Armella next to each other, and that would be a really dominant left side of the offensive line.
Go back. Open that back up, Logan.
Oh, okay.
Why's it got to be your Twitter?
Well, that's
Okay,
the one I
what-
got the good photos
He
on.
wouldn't send me these.
Why couldn't it be Dustin?
Look at that watermark that's back there on that van window.
Yeah, I like that.
I have to. I can't let these jits steal it up over there and get it on Instagram nowadays.
Looks like a
man.
sticker.
It
does look
is.
like a
Someone's
sticker.
doing the branding for us out there. Someone's branding for us on their window.
I dig his style too. A little poetic justice.
Yeah, I know, right? Got the
Eh,
fit.
If it happens, that needs to be the title of the article.
Yeah, there's your 6'7" and
Short
330.
title.
Those are monster hours. You know me. I'm not. I don't think Austin. You can't get
No,
mad at me about
but
my
you
excitement.
see the
about,
one with
you know,
him in
big size
the
guy.
wife beater. You know, he's very, very much built like the current tackles are that are in pro ball. You look at Evan Neal, who's arguably the top tackle in the draft. You know, he's the days of the 6'4", 340 guys is gone. You know, he doesn't look like he weighs 330. He looks like he
The
weighs.
watermark. I'm sorry, Nate.
I had to get on that one. That's a good photo. That's a good photo right there. That looks like a happy coach to me. That looks
I
like
like
a
his
happy
polo
coach.
too. His polo is hard.
You should have put
Yeah.
it. You should have put it on his right chest.
No. No. I'd have a DM the next.
Yeah,
The next
no,
day.
but you know, he right there is the prototypical left tackle that is, you know, coming in, playing 3 years, and going to the NFL. Everyone wants Bama, Georgia tackles. Here you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just going back to Armella real quick before we move on, you know, I don't think Florida State's in a position right now on the offensive line where any true freshmen this season are really going to be competing for playing time. I think they have enough experience up front and enough depth from previous classes where they're not going to need to rely on true freshmen. At the same time, hopefully Armella does come in and instantly start competing for a backup job. We'll just have to see. You know, it's a lot tougher for offensive linemen who are coming in June rather than some of the guys who got here in January. So it's just kind of a fluid situation. Everyone's a little different.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So we're going to continue to, you know, if anything happens while we're live here, you never know. It's Thursday night. It's 4:14. We all know what that means. So you never know what could happen tonight. But if anything happens while we're on the show, we'll keep you guys updated on what we're hearing. So, and we'll also have full updates throughout the weekend on Amarius Mims' visit. Like I said, expected to go through Friday and might be leaving Saturday, but that hotel's booked on Saturday. So we'll see. We will see. It would be definitely a gigantic land. It will be Florida State's biggest land under Coach Norvell, and would be an immediate impact to where, like Nate said, it could impact the game being a win or a loss. So definitely we will keep an eye on.
And real quick, it also tells other elite offensive linemen that, hey, you know, something's going on here that, you know, could bode well for me too. So we'll see.
Yeah. And before we move on, just want to say, you know, Florida State, they're not taking anything for granted on this visit. You know, obviously being there at the hotel yesterday to greet him and his family when they arrived in Tallahassee, but then same thing this morning. You got the entire staff out there waiting for Amarius Mims. Norvell's out there to greet him, Coach Atkins, everybody. They bring him in. There's a giant congregation of people waiting in the Moore. I'm guessing, you know, basically the entire rest of the football staff, the athletic staff, letting out a big cheer, war chants blaring. There was even 2 people up on the roof of the Moore Center. I remember I was sitting there taking a picture of Mims, and I hear someone saying, "Come to Florida State." And I look up, and like 50 feet up, there's 2 people up on the top of the Moore, like screaming down at him. So they're doing everything they can. I heard he went to a couple nice places to eat in Tallahassee, some of the finer dining. So as an offensive lineman, I'm sure he's enjoyed himself today.
So Whataburger and where else?
Whataburger's later tonight, but I'm sure they'll hit
that's a fine dining spot.
Nah, that's later tonight. No, that was true. The source told me they had, so we couldn't go into the Moore because, you know, media can't go in there. That's private. That's Florida State's establishment. But inside of the Moore was even crazier, D-Lo, because on the railings, 4 levels in there, all across the railings right there, looking down, were people a part of the program, waving, saying hello, you know, celebrating him coming in, doing the war chants. So that was probably a really cool experience to see him looking up and seeing a lot of the football program and the staff and the members there. Congratulating him for at least arriving to FSU. We'll see if it ends up being an even bigger celebration after the weekend or maybe sometime next week. It seems like this recruitment kind of wants to be sealed up earlier said than done. They want to kind of get this thing wrapped up. We'll see. We'll keep an eye on if he does end up making it down to Miami. But I will say right now, relationships wise, Florida State, I think, is in a way better spot than maybe down there in Miami. So we'll see. Let's jump into some spring game stuff because we also got some recruiting details to go over. But me, D-Lou, Maddox were there in attendance for this one. It's a spring game. It's a spring game. Yeah, it's definitely even more quieter and weirder when you're in the press box because it just feels like you're at another practice almost. But we got to see a few signs, and we talked about a few players that we thought that maybe could show out on Saturday. And one of those was Trey Benson, who kind of showed everybody that, hey, I'm fully healthy. Shut the flying F up. I'm good to go. I'm fully, I'm good and explosive, and I can cut, which he did. And you got to see how well he did. 7 carries, 77 yards. And it looks like that could potentially be your guy that you can have all around the field. And he looks like he's got some power to him too. That's a solid bag. What were y'all thoughts on Trey Benson? And then we'll get to Micah Pittman here in a second.
We've been hearing it since he enrolled. There was a lot of worry from the fan base about that knee, but maybe not as much so from people within the program. And you saw why on Saturday. This is a guy who I think now, after seeing him play, you can say he's fully recovered from that knee injury he suffered, and he's back to that point where he's confident on the leg again. You mentioned him cutting out there. He had multiple 20-plus yard runs where he was hitting a little bit of burst out there. I mean, he was the best looking running back on the day. Now, I'm sure Florida State, they try to protect Treshaun Ward a little bit because they know what they have in him and probably wanted to see how Benson worked in these scenarios a little bit since this is their first time putting him in something like that in front of the 30,000 fans and everything. But he looked good. He's a natural out there. And like you said, Logan, if he keeps gearing up as we move towards the fall, there's a chance he can contribute all over the field for that offense. Really like him as a second fiddle to Treshaun Ward along with Lawrence Toafili.
I'm not sure if you can keep him off the field. I'm not sure if he's going to take that number one spot. As much as, I love Treshaun Ward, I just what I saw from Benson, it's going to be hard to keep him off the field. The guy that big can move that quickly. It's a great combo. I think some people thought, I was crazy when I put that one of my, predictions that he leaves camp top of the depth chart, and I think it's really a legitimate conversation to see. He's a running back one. I think he's had that good enough of a spring, and I agree they protected. Treshaun Ward kept them, limited here and there. They did the same with Benson to take care of that knee, but I think that. That kid has some juice, and he's going to really help that running back room. So you have what I think right now are your top three in Benson, Ward, and Toafili, and then you have a guy like DJ Williams who can come in from time to time, and then you have a guy like Ronnie Hill who can be really dangerous in the passing game. And that doesn't even talk about CJ Campbell, who had a really great spring. So while there isn't a 5-star kid that has come in and is on that roster at running back, they have very capable guys that I think are going to help that run game tremendously. I really like what I saw from Benson.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I thought he looked smooth, and that's something that wasn't really going to be a shocker for us, for those being able to watch practices. This was, like I said, just kind of another one of those practices, and watching Benson explode like that is something that I think Florida State fans are going to be very excited to see, hopefully come this fall whenever he puts it on against a true opponent. And I think, too, you look over, we'll stay on the offense for a little bit before we talk about a future maybe big-time player on defense with Jared Verse. Let's talk about Micah Pittman, too, because we saw him get into a game and then after one play have to go back to the locker room, which was kind of a little made some fans a little nervous there, but he came back, looked to be fully healthy, and showed some flashes too. And it goes to show kind of how Florida State, how they're going to utilize him next year. Definitely in the short game passing routes. And, he's got really good vision too, guys. That's something that I think too, Florida State, Mike Norvell, they saw that in film. And I think too, fans were thinking, this is a special teams guy. He's going to contribute a big time, which he is going to do that. But I think people are going to be a little shocked by how much he may be an X factor on the offense this upcoming year for Florida State, just because of how good he is with his vision.
Yeah, I know some people are freaking out about the passing game, but four linemen were out, didn't play, held out. If I could be wrong, but Pittman's going to be an athlete in that offense. Not to jump ahead, maybe we'll talk about it. When we talk about Jordan Young, but does FSU go back to the portal for another guy, or do they sit in what they have? But the only concern I have is it seems like you got to fix the drops with Wilson. He had a couple drops that were that got to be cleaned up, just mental things, and had it happen in the scrimmages. So. Just small little things that they got to be fixed.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think for the most part on offense, being a spring game especially, they kept it pretty basic, pretty vanilla overall. And once the fall gets in and they're actually playing games, that's when you'll see some more of the complex stuff and hitting those deep shots. But all in all, like you said, Nate, I really. Johnny Wilson, excellent in some of those practices, but he did have some drops in that spring game. And there was also some mistakes by the quarterbacks as well, from Travis to Rodemaker to A.J. Duffy. So, yeah, really just want to see that chemistry continue to develop over these next couple months. I think it's going to be crucial for those 4 transfers to continue finding their place in the offense.
One guy who I thought, seemed to come on, and I know Logan and Dustin, you were there a few times. Logan, you were there. What was Keyshawn Portier? It seems like towards the back end of practice, he started to really come on. That's the guy I've always liked. I think that he's going to play a part. I think that the coaches like what you have in him, but going back to Pittman, I didn't get to watch the spring game live. I watched it later, but I do like, the versatility that Pittman can bring you towards the goal line. He's super, super quick and explosive. And, that's just another dynamic. When you get inside the 20, he can stretch the field, he can get sideline to sideline, and he gets up the field very quickly.
Yeah, no, Portier has had a really good spring, and I'm really excited. He had a beautiful one-handed grab. I think the FSU media is going to be putting it out here soon, but he had a really good grab on Florida State's last practice of the spring on Tuesday. And I thought out of the veteran guys that are there, and, you were wondering who maybe hitting the transfer portal, he had a very, very, out of all the guys that have been there, he had a really good spring, except for, of course, Malik McLean. Let's don't forget that Malik McLean is still on this roster. But for guys that out of the potential, we knew Malik McLean is a starter heading into 2022, but you had to figure out of a veteran side who was going to be leaving, and I think Portier is here to stay.
Yeah, and Kitchon too is really good on the back shoulder stuff, and that's a big part of today's offenses. So, I hope Norvell and the coaching staff kind of realizes that, and that could be a weapon. He's a big guy. He's all 6'2", 185, 190. So he's got a great frame, and he uses it well. He understands how to use his body to create separation.
Someone that had a lot of separation and got to the quarterback pretty quickly was Jared Verse. Jared Verse, my guy. I've been high on him, and I'm going to stop saying it because I think he's kind of just established himself now as a pivotal factor, I think, on Florida State's defense, because you're still trying to figure out who your starting defensive ends are. But who had a great spring, but talk about the spring game, man. I mean, we only got to see a little bit of him as kind of expected, but whenever he was in there, I was pointing to D-Lou and saying, watch number 5 this play and see what he does to disrupt the play. And bull rushes the offensive lineman, the tackle, and goes up and almost, I think, batted the ball for J-Trav. I thought Jared Verse, out of that defense, a guy that shined on Saturday, and not also that, and in special teams, blocked a was it a punt?
Field goal.
Blocked the field goal. Jared Verse is here. And I'm very excited for the fall for him because, like Adam Fuller said in the press conference today, he's still a guy that wants to get coached, and they're still working on his technique, and the ceiling is so high. It's very high for him. But to see him take that from, just spring practices to taking it to inside Doak his first time there and seeing that doesn't really change for him much because some players it does rattle. We saw with Johnny Wilson was an absolute menace this spring, coming down with balls that we weren't expecting him to have. We didn't see that in the highlight tapes and spring practice do it. But then when it came to the game, what was up with the drops? Which, that was definitely not expected from us being able to go watch his practices. But with Jared Verse, it's Jared Verse. It's not going to change no matter what. And I don't think it's going to change when it's, 8 o'clock LSU, FSU, prime time on Labor Day weekend.
So Verse had the best spring of any defensive lineman for sure. I think right behind him still is Derek McClendon. I think that's your two starters come opening day. I mean,
I agree with you right now.
He had a tremendous spring. Looks great. Busted his tail. If you put Verse here, I think you put McClendon not far underneath him. So, that's exciting. And, you have Briggs and, Patrick Payton had a really good spring. So, gotta like what you can see there. I'm not surprised that Verse came on, but I am surprised just, sometimes, just adjusting to that level. But when you're as much of a freak athlete as he is, and I think the most surprising part to me is that he's just he's a jerk on the field. I love that part. He ain't not afraid to just come after you. I didn't expect that.
That's my favorite part by far. That gives me Timmy J vibes.
He just does not care.
Dude, come after you. You good?
Is everything good in there?
It's always good here.
Did you not hear the crash?
Something's happening.
It's an every minute thing, dude. Kids and dogs, man.
Yep, something's happening. But go ahead, D-Lo.
Yeah, I think one of the most impressive things about Verse is he got here in January for the tour of duty, and just ever since, I mean, he's just continued to improve, continued to make his name heard throughout this process, and it culminates with that spring game performance where he had 2 sacks, 2 tackles for loss. You mentioned the blocked field goal, but really, and you said it, Logan, watching him every play, we were up there with our binoculars. Thanks for buying those. How much those cost?
Really heavy, like $20-something. So we have to work a little bit harder.
And you couldn't even get 2 pairs. There was one single pair of tiny binoculars.
I hand it to you. God,
yeah, I had to share your binoculars to watch the offensive and defensive line. Thank you. But anyway, like every play, especially passing plays, Verse, if he wasn't making the sack, like he was right there in the backfield, just making guys look silly. And whether that's a product of playing against Florida State's offensive line, or if it's product of just being a damn good football player, which I think is the case, Verse succeeded. And you said it, Nate, his transition from the FCS to the FBS, there were some question marks, about how quickly he would be able to adjust to this level. And he's passed every test with flying colors to this point and really turned into not only a good player, but an emotional leader for that defense, and kind of reminds me of Jermaine Johnson in that sentiment. And I think it's just going to continue. He seems like a really team-oriented guy. And throughout the process between him picking to Florida State and getting here, we got the chance to interview him. Just seems like a really stand-up individual, someone that already has the right head on their shoulders and someone ready to succeed. And he came to Florida State to do that, and he's proven it.
So I don't think it's maybe it's getting too far out of context, but I think what I saw from the spring, I don't think you get the dynamic play that you have with Jermaine Johnson. I still think that you could still have the same amount of sacks that him and Keir Thomas had. as a unit. I still think you get as many sacks, maybe a few more, because I think that FSU has a really good interior defensive line, and I think they have, like I said earlier, four guys, and that's not even including Kashawn Fuller, who had a pretty solid spring. So you have 5 guys who can get after it. So I don't think that coming into spring, we kind of talked about on here, where do the sacks come from? I think that that question was answered.
Yeah, no, you can definitely see that the impact that you'll have with McClendon and Jared Verse is going to be great. And you see Pat Payne make flashes this spring. We'll have a whole nother podcast to kind of recap the spring, so I won't dive into every player, but there's definitely some exciting players behind that. Like Coach Adam Fuller said today, that he was really pleased with how also Bishop Thomas and Daniel Lyons showed up to the spring and performed for true freshmen coming in, and how well they played. And I'm right there. I'm 100% agreeing with Adam Fuller. I wasn't expecting to see too much from Thomas and Daniel Lyons. I think Thomas is a little bit ahead more than Daniel Lyons, and I'm a fan of Thomas. I think that's a guy that, you see Odell Higgins give him some hard coaching, and he did the same thing with Farmer. But Farmer now is going to be an impact player, getting into that early rotation this upcoming year. I mean, the defensive line unit, definitely in that interior D line, like Adam Fuller said today, they feel like they're going to be even better than they did last year because you're bringing back everybody. You're bringing back Fabian Lovett. That's a guy who could have had chances, was hearing out NFL. You have Robert Cooper, very talented guy who also could be feeling out NFL this last year, decides to come back. You got 2 tanks in the middle there in your interior, and Florida State was one of, if not the best in the ACC, and on your run game inside defense. But then you also have Jared Jackson, who had a monster spring. I thought he saw big time strides, which is a guy that you still have for couple more seasons. And then you look at Malcolm Ray, who we saw last year make some strides and flashes, and then Farmer, and then you throw in some guys back there, those freshmen, Bishop Thomas, Daniel Lyons. We'll see how much PT they get, but into your defensive line is probably your best group right now.
There's some people that think Farmer had a better spring than Jackson.
I don't know too much about that. I don't believe that. Not for me, at least. Jared kind of hit a different gear that I didn't see.
I've heard it both ways, but even being
it's
able
good
to have
if it
that
was.
debate is great.
Yeah. No, that would be great. I mean, Farmer definitely had his flashes, just the power that he has, and dude, we saw it toward duty in the first practice. Nate, when you're there, we saw how big Farmer put on some size there, but you get to see his punch and his rip has just gotten so much better. And this was our first time being able to see a spring, so not, can't go off of what we were doing while being credentialed and watching, game prep type practices in the fall, but just to see the power that he brings and what he brought this spring was impressive. I thought Jared Jackson had a very good, definitely the second half of spring, another gear kicked with him. And I don't know really what happened, but someone pissed him off, and it's going to be fun watching JJ. And he's turned into a leader too. That interior defensive line group, I think, and I don't think it's really a big argument, that's your best unit on this team heading into 2022 by far. Most reliable.
Yeah, you mentioned the 4 guys, and they're all bona fide starters, and we'll see if Joshua Farmer can get into that rotation as well. Florida State just bringing back an immense amount of depth and talent at the interior defensive line, and really I think that and the defensive backfield can develop into it. Those 2 position groups are kind of the backbone of that defense. You're going to look to that interior to create a lot of havoc, and hopefully at the same time it's going to open up what those guys on the edge want to do in Verse and McClendon and Dennis Briggs and all the guys there. The defensive line, it could be a real problem for some teams next year. Florida State, they've got a bunch of different pieces that they can play in a variety of factors to certain players' strengths. So some guys can be out there to help stop the run. Some guys can come in on third down package to help get to the passer. There's some interesting combinations, and Adam Fuller, Odell, Coach JP, I think they're going to have some fun leading up to August, kind of figuring out where to put these guys on the board.
Yeah, I want to go to quarterback real quick too, because we saw them in the spring game. We saw a lot of interceptions there and goal line drills, and everybody's freaking out, losing their minds. I will say, I want to go straight to Tate Rodemaker. This QB1, I don't really need to talk more about that. I still think there's definitely some learning and developing there for Jordan Travis, but he showed me what I need. He was by far, let alone the best quarterback in that room. There's no need to dive in on Jordan Travis right now.
Hard not to be that day.
Yeah, but looking at, looking at QB2, they got to look at the transfer portal. I don't know what maybe some other people were seeing and reporting on, and there's a reason why we got X's and O's, our guys over there, being a little sarcastic.
Back to back.
The Heisman spring winner, Rodemaker, but I went to every single practice, and I don't think I'm an straight on analyst. X's and O's guys, X's and Knowles, I should say, X's and Knowles guys. They know a little bit more about me. They evaluate, they look at the plays, all this kind of stuff. But just from awareness and watching practices, I didn't see anything change there. Nothing of an upside for maybe Rodemaker. And that's not a great sign from a guy that you're hoping to take that next step to, you feel good about having a QB2 to go and throw into a game. Let's say, I'm not even going to say it because that'd be bad luck. But if you lose Jordan Travis in a big time game early on in the season, you got to have a guy behind him that you feel comfortable throwing in there. And right now, I don't feel like Duffy and Rodemaker, there's not a huge separation there. Yes, Rodemaker, he has more experience, he has more chemistry, he understands his reads more, but there's not a huge step up from Duffy, who just arrived and is as a true freshman quarterback, is sometimes making some good throws that Rodemaker's doing on the same thing. I don't know. I think that some places, that's their opinion. Mine is mine, but I just did not see a big time progress from Rodemaker this spring. And that might just be me.
I agree with you, Logan. I think that, Tate's a good practice arm. I said that on here a couple of times. I think that, this spring is a Pierre clean example that FSU needs to hit the portal for a backup. Because if they land Mims, the only thing keeping this from being a competitive year is the health of Jordan Travis. And we saw in the Florida game, what happens, if Tate's got to be depended on, and that wasn't pretty. And Duffy's just not ready yet. I fully agree. I think that, they had to look at the portal for a backup. And I get it. Quarterbacks aren't transferring to sit behind. I understand that. But, there's still got to be some tires kicked on some guys to see if they can get them into Tallahassee. Because it's not a – I think that might be one of the biggest question marks coming out of spring is what happens if, God forbid, Jordan goes down.
Right. We could really use a Chubba Purdy right now. That kind of threw a wrench in everything.
Yeah, no, that didn't help. That, well, he can go, what is it, backup or QB3
third string quarterback at Nebraska.
Tough. Yeah, that is tough. That is really tough. Not too pretty.
He would definitely be the backup here, I think. I think you guys can agree on that.
Yeah, but Florida State's got to find, and that they're in a really sticky situation, man. You want to get quarterback that can come in and just straight up be a backup, but quarterbacks don't want to do that. They don't want to transfer and sit again. There's a reason why they're transferring. So Florida State's in a really sticky spot. You brought in Alex Hornibrook, but that was overall a cluster F. So that doesn't even.
That was Willie Taggart.
I don't really want to base that.
That's Willie Taggart, buddy. That's what
I'm saying. So that's why we're not going to evaluate and say, "Oh, that worked did, so it should happen again." That was just a complete, utter, what. So
it went terrible too.
Yeah, no, you're. How many quarterbacks played in that season? Just throwing them in and seeing what happens. Quarterbacks want to come in and start, and so that's why it's a tough situation for like, hey. We want a quarterback. We want you to come, but Jordan Travis is our leader. He's our QB1, but we want you to come, back him up, and if he goes down, you get your playing time and such. But, a little bit different.
It's
different how it was last year because, Jordan Travis was competing for a starting job.
Quote, 2 years in
with McKenzie.
2 years in, he hasn't stayed healthy yet. So, I'm hoping the best of him staying healthy. And again, getting a Mims, lowers that injury chance significantly, but also his style of play leads him to possibly getting hurt. So, man, it's tough, man. It's a tough selling point, but I think that they got to get out there and try to make it happen.
You got to give it a shot, but just in this day and age of college football, it's just such a tough predicament to be in. Because then it's like, are we bringing in a guy who has more years of eligibility beyond 2022. How's that going to impact what Duffy's thinking about? How's that going to impact what the guys you have committed are thinking about, which, you have quarterback commits in 23 and 24 right now. There's a big picture scenario, but at the same time, Florida State, they need depth at that position. Like you said, I mean, the performances from Rodemaker and Duffy on Saturday simply weren't good enough, and I would not feel comfortable if I was Florida State's coaching staff at this point and having to insert them in a game if Jordan Travis was to go down. And he's missed a couple games over the last couple of years due to a variety of factors. So it's an interesting scenario. And, Florida State, they were still active in that transfer portal up until June, July last year, bringing in guys. I think the last guy to get in was defensive end Marcus Cushney, like 2 to 4 weeks before fall camp started. So you can bet that the staff is going to continue to feel things out, see who's in the portal, see who jumps in after the spring, which we're seeing from Florida State side now. It's going to start happening from other schools across the country. So maybe an option emerges. Hello?
Hey, I just want to shout out Fire Medic. Shout out to you.
Fire Medic.
Yeah.
I don't know who is that in the comments?
Yeah.
Someone with a correct take is who it is.
Yeah. Shout out.
Here we go. Yeah, here we go.
Shout out Diamond Hands too. Appreciate the love.
Says Logan, Dustin, and Austin are on point. Nate is like listening to nails on a chalkboard, holding on
Appreciate
to these guys.
that, man.
Damn.
Love
hey,
it.
that is good stuff there. We're hoping that maybe we'll send you an autograph. Nate, do you want to get an autograph sent to him by the weekend?
Yeah, I'll send it to you. Go tell.
Get him a shirt. I get him a shirt. You sign the shirt and we'll send him one.
I'll sign it. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
perfect.
Seems
like your biggest fans in the comments.
I love it, man. It's just what I've always wanted.
You finally made it. You finally made it.
Some guy I've never heard of just having an opinion and I couldn't care less about.
Let's jump into some recruiting, though, before we get into some other things. We're going to jump into a lot of basketball later on the show, but also the rest of spring and recapping that probably next week or the next week after. I don't know. We won't rush anything, but we'll dive deep into the spring and have our winners and losers, position groups, players that won, players that lost, all that kind of stuff. So we'll spend that probably next week. But let's talk about the recruiting weekend, guys. I mean, a very, very busy one once again. Florida State, catching up with a lot of high caliber talent this weekend. And, I think starting off with number one, Florida State having the number one 2024 quarterback, Jaden Davis, in for a visit. And D-Lou, you were in person with him, we all saw him after the spring game and have a very lengthy conversation. I think one thing that is very significant here in the relationship with Florida State is Tony Tokars with Jaden. Is that kind of what you got the vibe from? And what else, D-Lou?
Yeah, really with Jaden, like you said, his initial contact with Florida State began when Kenny Dillingham was still the offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach. And since then, Tony Tokars has assumed that role, moving up to be the quarterbacks coach and just jumped headstrong into this recruitment. And one thing with Jaden is he really likes that Tony himself played quarterback during his college career and that he's coached at a bunch of different places. Feels like with someone that played quarterback at the college level, he can relate to them a lot more than some other quarterbacks coach. He mentioned some guys start out at different positions before moving to quarterbacks coach, which I thought was interesting. But also his conversation with Norvell is something that stood out. He said that he's a guy who can see through the BS, and he's like, I see no BS with Coach Norvell, and just mentioned how Norvell is trying to put him in a good position, not only on the football field, but off the field to succeed as well, which I think is something we hear from a lot of recruits. And this is a guy with a really good head on his shoulders. His dad's a Marine. He said his mom, when he was growing up, it was no books, no ball. So he's always been striving to do good in school. And Florida State, I mean, they're heavily in this recruitment. He said he's feeling good about FSU right now. Didn't want to name, a top list or say Florida State's the leader. But early on in this recruitment, FSU, they're doing a good job. And he said, any place I come on my own dad's dime is somewhere I'm considering seriously, which I thought was interesting. His dad, his mom, pretty much the whole family, except for I think his sister, who he actually mentioned he's going to be coming back. Didn't have a firm date, but he's like, next time I'm back here, my sister will be here as well to check out the basketball side of things. And he did say he'll be back in the summer sometime, plan to release a top list this summer. And Florida State, all in on this guy. They want 2 quarterbacks in 2024. Already have Luke Kromenhoek committed right now, and Jaden Davis would be the ideal second signal caller to bring in what is currently the number 1 quarterback in the 2024 class, the number 2 prospect overall behind Desmond Ricks, who's also an FSU target. So, you went on the field this year. You're feeling good about the momentum you have going into that 2024 recruiting class.
Anybody else during the weekend, D-Lou, that, you were able to catch up with? We talked with Chris Parson for quite a bit, and after a while, I don't know what else more he can talk about other than maybe the recruitment that he's doing with recruits, definitely on these visits. But, anybody maybe also worth mentioning that was an Owls, maybe the number 1 player in the 2024 class, maybe that guy might be worth mentioning.
Yeah, Chris Parson did his thing. He was heavily involved in these recruiting efforts once again. And a lot of these guys he's seeing for, the second, third, fourth time. In the case of guys like Roderick Kearney, Keon Brown, guys like Tommy Kinsler, Chris Parson, he's already been around those guys before in January and March, now again in April. So just those relationships are continuing to be built. This is actually Roderick Kearney's 3rd visit to FSU since January, which is huge because he came out of this one once again, like the last one last month, saying that FSU is still his leader. And Tommy Kinsler been he's a Florida fan, grew up a Florida fan, but he's been to FSU so many times. You have to think they're right in the thick of the battle. And Keon Brown, local guy, this was actually his 5th visit to FSU this offseason, which, it's a short ride over from, I believe he goes to Rickards. But regardless, important to see him visit 5 times. And you look at his other visit schedule, he's only been to one other school 1 time. So significant amount of visits in Florida State's favor. And just, man, the 2024 class, absolutely ridiculous. We mentioned Desmond Ricks. Then you have Charles Lester, who's basically a top 15 player in the 2024 class, another 5-star defensive back. You have CJ Hurd, who's going to be a pretty touted defensive back himself whenever he does get a rating, a guy who's already, I believe, over 40 offers. I think
he's up to a 4-star.
Yeah. And Jordan Pride as well, a guy committed to FSU. So, just legitimately some of the top defensive backs in that next class, all at Florida State. You're seeing the coaching staff get out to an early start with those relationships. And, there was hope to gain a commitment this weekend. There was hope Desmond Ricks would commit. Maybe some other guys would commit. That didn't happen due to a variety of factors. But Desmond said coming out of the visit, Florida State's still up top. They're the team to beat. And I think FSU, they're still in a good position to get a commitment from him before the offseason is over. But we'll see if that ends up happening.
Yeah, I talked to a couple of guys. It seemed like this visit is heavy on this visit this weekend was heavy on 2024. One thing that Luke Kromenhoek mentioned was just the camaraderie that, even like guys are going to compete. Him and Chris Parsons getting along very well. And the overall vibe was that they really enjoyed what the coaches presented to visit, that there was a good vibe overall from everyone. The interest is real. And, there's a lot of interest in FSU. Like Dustin said, a lot of these high-rated 5-star kids that were in town have a lot of legitimate interest in FSU, and how it plays out will be partly dictated on what happens on the field this year. But, Florida State's done a really good job of getting a lot of these kids repeatedly on campus, this spring. So we'll have updates coming up left and right. I got a bunch to type up. So, the overall vibe was like we've heard from the Elite Junior Day, and anything that the staff has done has been a great visit. So,
yeah, and just looking through my phone, sticking with 2023, Wilkie Denard back for another visit. last time he hinted something might be coming up. I found it interesting this time around. He was asked if Florida State still leads after everything last month. He's like, they're in the top 5 for sure. So I'm not sure if maybe something happened there where he tried to commit. The staff maybe didn't want to take him yet or what, but that's a scenario to monitor. And also running back Kylan Webb, the running back board. Richard Young just eliminated Florida State a couple days ago. So now they're starting to push for some of those secondary targets a little bit. Kylan Webb probably going to be one of them. Clemson is interested, so that's going to be a battle. And last one I'll go with a guy who could be enrolling in the summer. You've got JUCO defensive back Justice. I don't know if it's Ugo or Hugo, but he was on campus for an official visit this weekend, wrapped up on Sunday. Really just spent a lot of time with Adam Fuller, Coach Woodson, getting comfortable with FSU and learning more about those coaches. And I think Florida State has offered in this recruitment. I think as long as they want them, Hugo is probably going to end up at Florida State. Right now, main competition that he mentioned was Illinois and Kansas. So interesting that Florida State had a defensive back depart from the roster today when they're pursuing a guy like this who is able to enroll this summer. I think he has 4 years to play 3, if I'm correct. This was he only spent 1 year in JUCO, which was this fall. He's still there this spring, but he's already earned enough credits to earn his AA and transfer to a higher institution, if that makes sense.
And also too, West Virginia just offered, so he's still getting offers from Division I programs. So he's one to watch for sure.
Anything else coming from the weekend, D-Lou or Nate?
I'm sure I'm missing something, but there was
we don't
just
have to
so
rush
much.
on. There will be more that we can go back and talk about next week too.
After today, my brain's a little frazzled. Sorry.
There's a lot. I'm not too entirely sure if people are here to listen to the recruiting updates
the biggest recruit right now is in town right now.
Yeah, that is what everybody is worried about. Once this kind of, hopefully, maybe if it does end up kind of slowing down and the good news part of things, and we'll have that or maybe recap a MEMS part, and then maybe we'll talk more about some of the recruiting latest that we're hearing, and who knows, it might create some momentum for some other guys to swing towards Florida State way. We'll see. You never know.
Last important thing to note, Cam Davis back at FSU after that Alabama visit.
Yeah.
So that's huge. Every one of Florida State's commits over 23 and 24 were in town, except for Vondravius Jacobs. He had a 7-on-7 event, and KJ Sampson let me know that he was celebrating his mom and sister's birthday up there in North Carolina, so he couldn't make the trip either. But everyone else in town, which is a great sign, and I think we'll see some additions to maybe both classes over the next couple months.
Mm-hmm. Yep, Florida State doing a very good job getting steady and ready for this 2024 class and also 2023, but seem to be ahead of the game in the 2024 cycle.
I will say one thing about Webb, the running back. He's a guy I really like on film. The guy competed nationally in the long jump for the AAU circuit. I think he finished like 4th or 5th. Super explosive. I know, he's kind of under the radar right now, but chances with Richard Young were always slim. So be it. It's what happens. But, big fan of Smothers. He's probably number 1 on the board right now. But Webb is a guy who, someone to watch over the summer and, into the fall.
Mm-hmm.
Let's
talk about Hunter Washington and Jordan Young real quick, because we kind of been teasing a little bit here and there, and it's been brought up in discussions. But earlier today, it was reported and broke that Hunter Washington, Florida State defensive back, has entered the transfer portal along with veteran wide receiver Jordan Young. Abusement Park, I guess, is officially closed here, at least in Tallahassee. But these two guys electing to hit the transfer portal. Hunter Washington, from what I kind of know, and the vibe that I'm getting from spring camp, just wants more playing time. I've seen flashes of Jordan Young, and he's definitely maybe a practice star. Maybe things just aren't going well. Maybe understanding the system, playbook, etc. But he's got the physical attributes that you absolutely love. But on Hunter Washington's side, I think this is just more of wanting more playing time. And you got to see that there are some young guys that moved up in this depth chart early on. Like you're looking at Sam McCall, you're looking at Azare Thomas. Yeah, you brought in Greedy Vance, and then you've got Kevin Knowles, who flashed last year, who's going to be your potential and most likely starter heading into 2022 in that nickel position. Really tough kind of position that Hunter Washington's in, at least starting off with him.
It's a little surprising.
He's your number 1 rated recruit in this class.
But I think the emergence of the young kids kind of contributed to that. I think that, he's not going to get a lot of playing time, like you said. On the outside, it's extremely competitive right now on the outside for Florida State. It happens, man. Florida State's in a good spot. There's still a lot of talent in that room. So I am a little surprised because it's a guy that Coach Woodson, really dialed in on very quickly. When he came over to Florida State, he's a guy that he loved at Auburn. Florida State had to hold on to Hunter Washington. Clemson made a really big push for him towards the end of his recruitment. But again, like we said earlier, sometimes it just comes down to fit, and it's not a fit. So I wish the kid luck. He's a solid kid, and hopefully he finds a spot where he gets the playing time he wants.
Yeah, I remember him coming out of high school. He was really one of the guys that was solid in that class, always tweeting out pro Tribe 21 stuff and doing his part to try and get different guys on board. And, just this past season, you saw those other 2 young corners, Kevin Knowles and Amarion Cooper, step up and really show that they have promising futures. And at the same time, Hunter Washington, I'm sure he was frustrated that he didn't have the opportunity to break into that role like those 2 guys did. Was the special teams scout team player of the year for Florida State in the fall. But, that's just simply not enough for a guy who wants to compete at the highest level. So I completely understand it. In his case, Florida State, before his departure, had 9 scholarship cornerbacks. And, it's tough to say where he fit in that pecking order, but probably more of a reserve guy, So I think him moving on, it's good for him to get a shot somewhere else, and all the best to him.
Yep. Wishing both of them best of luck, and this is how it goes nowadays. And this is, I think, too, for these 2 guys that I think could go somewhere and be a splash for other teams. I think this is why the transfer portal has his upside here, because those 2 guys represented Florida State very well and are talented. So best of luck.
I don't think any of us are surprised by Jordan Young, though. I mean,
it was going to be a battle between Portier. We'll still see on Helton, Ontario.
It just never clicked for the kid, man. Coming in, I definitely thought he was Tamari Ontario Part 2, and it just never came together for him.
With 4 transfers coming in, someone had to be out.
Yep.
I mean, Math had to figure out somewhere.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, Florida State brought in 4 transfer wide receivers, so we always knew guys were going to leave this room, and Jordan Young was maybe one of the tops on that list for a lot of guys on this show, just because he hasn't been able to produce yet in his college career after, an exceptional breakout senior season in high school that saw him sign with Florida State. That abusement park highlight tape is probably still one of the best I've ever seen from a wide receiver. I mean, he was absolutely ridiculous. Whenever I was watching that, I was like, you can't convince me this kid's not going to be at least a starter at the college level, if not a star. I mean, saw a lot there, but it hasn't clicked for Jordan Young. We've seen some flashes in practice, just for whatever reason, hasn't been able to carry it into those game scenarios. And another guy, I mean, he's worked hard. He's done what he needed to do, just hasn't been able to get up to that level that Florida State would like him at. So I wish him all the best. And last thing on Hunter Washington, it came to my mind. You have to think about those other 3 new defensive backs that showed up in January: Sam McCall, Azare Thomas, and Greedy Vance. Those are 3 other guys that really competed this spring, showed a lot of promise, and might have passed them up as well. So that cornerback spot for Florida State, a lot of youth there, but a lot of talent. And like I said earlier, along with that interior defensive line, I think the DBs have the best chance to develop into kind of a backbone of that defense, something they can rely on.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Before we jump into some basketball, we got over 150 on here. It kind of slimmed down once we got off the Marius Mims talk, but 150 here. If you're on YouTube right now, hit the like button if you wouldn't mind. We're almost close to 100 likes. I think we're at 67, but I think we could get to 100 likes. If you like it, it goes to more FSU fans and come and hang out with us. And also, if you are new to the YouTube page, hit that subscribe button so then you also will be notified every time we go live, or it'll at least show up on your YouTube page. So we do these every Thursday night at 8:30 p.m. Looking to have a lot of guests on this offseason too, along with current Noles playing for Florida State. So, and hopefully some coaching staff members too along the lines during this offseason and the rest of spring and into the summer. So if you haven't yet, hit the like button down below. We would definitely appreciate it, and that definitely helps support us a little bit. BZ, not a whole lot, not as busy as last week. Obviously, definitely not going to be as big as what we had to talk about last week, which CY leaving Coach Ham. But, we've got some portal stuff to also talk about. There's Mims portal football stuff, and then there's also, we got to care about this, Nate. There's also Coach Ham and his portal stuff happening too.
Yeah, there's a decent chance FSU has their own, or FSU basketball has their own big time transfer on campus this weekend. We've heard a couple rumblings that UCF transfer Darren Green Jr. might be on campus this weekend. We're still trying to confirm it. Guy that, I don't know if y'all remember, he lit Florida State up in Tallahassee 2 years ago. I think he was 6 of 9 for 3, 20 points. Kid's a lethal shooter. 37% from distance his last 2 years on 7 attempts per game from threes, a lot. We haven't had something like that at Florida State in a long time. Even PJ was only pushing about 5 attempts per game. So it's good that they're after a guy like that has that kind of shot making and shot creating, really, because he can score from all 3 levels. I know most of his shot comes from 3, but he's dangerous from anywhere. They did a Zoom interview with Virginia Tech transfer Naheem Aline, another great 3-point shooter, upper 30%, a little bit more size to him at 6'5", 6'6". And then I'm going to butcher this last dude's name. Apparently they're in the top 4 for Norshad Omir. From Arkansas State, was Sunbelt Player of the Year. Really talented player, just averaged 18 and 12. I believe as a redshirt freshman, redshirt sophomore. Really, really talented kid. I have a feeling he's going to end up at either Miami or Texas Tech, but he should be visiting Florida State very soon. You land one of those 3 guys, you feel a lot better about your next team. The fact that they're after 2 guards, though, makes me wonder, is something happening with Caleb Mills that we don't know about yet, or some other guard? We're not too sure on that yet, but they're after some very talented guards and very talented players, really. We'll see if anyone comes to Tallahassee. I think the ship's kind of sailed on Julian Phillips at this point. I know it's still kind of quiet on that front, and everybody wants to hear that news, but I just don't see a way it's happening, at least not right now, not without something changing. And I think they need some veteran play on this team anyways, not another young guy. I know I've said that a few times. Obviously, you don't turn down Phillips if he says, hey, I want to come to Tallahassee. Obviously, you don't turn him down. But yeah, I think it's trending away from Phillips for right now.
Is that just because of relationships, or just like there's just other options that might fit him better?
I would say other options. I mean, obviously, CY leaving plays a part, but Smith's recruiting him more anyways. And there's still a lot to play on his recruitment. I don't think he's in a rush to decide, but I just think it's, Florida State didn't have the best of the season. He wants to go somewhere where he can be successful and be prepared for the next level. Maybe he just doesn't see that at Florida State right now, which I think would be a mistake because Florida State has 7 guys in the NBA right now.
What do you think, Dustin?
I'm scrolling on Twitter. What are we talking about?
Oh, wow. I'm listening to BZ.
I'm listening to what I do when y'all talk recruiting.
Yeah, exactly.
I needed a break. It's been a long day for me, boys.
But he's on Twitter. He's still looking.
I needed a second to chill my head.
Oh, goodness. No, but I want to get into, so is that kind of the wrap up on transfers, or is there more?
That's pretty much it, because all of this has come out in the last 24 hours, really.
Okay.
Especially the Omir news was just announced like 3 hours ago, 4 hours ago.
What about
kind of surprised?
What about the replacement for CY? Any more traction there for Florida State?
It should be RJ Barsh. There's some kind of snag in the negotiations, but I'm very certain it's still going to happen. I thought it was going to be by the end of this week, but it might be early next week at this point. I'm still the Boise State assistant. I'm very confident that's happening.
Okay, gotcha. And then now we're heading to NBA playoffs, which I was talking with VZ that lasts way too long. 2 months of just.
Yeah. We still have 2 more months of basketball.
I love it. I love it, man.
Way too
Saturday, I'm be glued to the TV. I'm telling you.
And I love the play-in. Like I know people are like, but the stakes at Brains are so much fun.
Mm-hmm.
Especially Tuesday night's games were a blast. Both of those games between Brooklyn and Cleveland, and then Minnesota and the Clippers were really, really good games.
Mm-hmm.
It was cool to see in that Clippers Timberwolves game. You saw Malik Beasley and Terrence Mann, go blow for blow a couple times.
It's awesome.
Mann had that really nice dunk, come down the lane, right hand tomahawk. Beasley had a couple just daggered threes to get Minnesota back in the game when they got down. It was a fun game. It was a really fun game.
What about the block from T-Man though, where he almost snatched it out of the air? I was like, man. That's a grown man right there.
I don't understand the Clippers minutes with him because I don't think he checked into the game until there was like a minute left in the first quarter. I think he played like 5 total minutes in the first half, and then he plays almost the entire second half. I'm like, what are y'all doing? Like, obviously he's a good player. He averaged almost 11 points, 5 rebounds, and 3 assists this year. Like, play the kid.
Mm-hmm. But I agree, man. Play-in, it's produced some great moments. You look at those franchises like Minnesota and New Orleans, teams that don't typically have a lot of postseason success. It's huge for them to earn victories like that and fight their way to the playoffs.
And it also gives young guys development chances in big moments. Because, you play 82 games in regular seasons, whatever, but you get real playoff-like environments. Obviously, they're not in the playoffs yet, but those kind of environments, then it brings out moments like Devin Vassell going for a career high 23 points last night, hitting 7 threes. He was really, really good in that game. And not only was he doing that, but most of the game he was guarding Brandon Ingram. So he was playing on New Orleans' best option and leading his team in scoring. He was remarkable Wednesday night for San Antonio. And it's good to see him take that leap because he went from, what was it? I think he was averaging like 2 or 3 points a game his rookie year last year to up to 12 points per game this year. It's a huge jump. Huge jump. I'm super, super happy for him.
Kind of same thing at Florida State, right? Didn't really start contributing FSU until kind of the tail end of that true freshman season. And then, bam, breakout sophomore year and to the NBA. And you're seeing it again, another breakout sophomore season, setting himself up for a good path in San Antonio. And obviously, that franchise has been excellent at developing players under Popovich and Vassell, the next guy they have to tap the talent out of.
There's no reason he can't be what Mikal Bridges is right now, a guy that's an elite 3-and-D option, guy that's in the running for Defensive Player of the Year. There's no reason he can't be that, really, because he's got the same kind of build.
Is Scotty going to win this Rookie of the Year award?
There's a lot of smoke.
I don't think so.
I think it's going to be like, I think Mobley's going to win it, but it's going to be close. It's going to be like 55-45. Just from ballots that I've seen it split pretty down the middle with just favorite Mobley by a couple votes. It's close. I mean, he had a hell of a rookie season.
Better than you thought, Dustin?
Definitely better than I thought.
Better than I thought. I mean, I'm gonna be honest, because we didn't really see his offensive game that developed at Florida State. If you had told me he was gonna average 15 points, 7 rebounds, 3 assists, a steal, and almost a block as a rookie, I would have thought you were crazy. He hit 30% of his threes on 2.5 attempts per game. I mean, he hit 55% of his twos, and he was unreal this season.
Well, he found he got a rhythm right there, kind of around the free throw line with that jump shot and also his floater. He just kind of figured out, and then also his shot. You could tell he really worked on the fundamentals a lot, and it looked a lot cleaner. Whenever I didn't watch a ton of Toronto, but especially whenever Boston match up with him, Scotty Barnes started to scare me. And I'm like, come on, man, like just chill out.
If I'm not looking forward to playing this Toronto team. Like there is no way that's going to be fun for them
without their best wing defender. Yeah.
It's not even that. It's just Harden likes to take advantage of mismatches. Where's the mismatch? You go from Fred VanVleet to Oh yeah, let's switch. Oh, Scotty Barnes is on me. Oh God, let me switch again. Oh God, OG Anunoby. Then it's
you get
Pascal
Pascal,
Siakam. Yeah, then it's Precious Achua. Like it just keeps going. It's just Toronto's just long win after long win. It just keeps going. It's going to be interesting. I think what favors Scotty in this Rookie of the Year vote, he's a little bit more involved in the offense, whereas Mobley's more putbacks and just easy chances around the rim. And then voters like looking at the stats.
Right.
Scotty's having a little bit more in points, not that much, but a little bit more. It's going to be a close race. I'm really excited that he's even in the conversation. 'Cause I think a lot of us thought, he'll be okay his first year, but he's going to be one of those guys that 3 or 4 years down the line we're going to go, oh wow, this guy's really good. He's really good to win. Shout out to him.
Yeah, I think Mobley edges it out, but Scotty Barnes still going to be a first-team All-Rookie, and
for sure,
like I said about Devin Vassell, setting himself up for a really nice future in this league. Especially a guy with his work ethic.
I mean, we could talk about a lot of these FSU guys thriving. Pat had 35 points in the season finale. Had 10 points, I think, in 6 of his final 7 games as he's getting healthy. Wow. He's coming around right at the right time when Chicago needs a big guy that can play some defense. I don't see him going for 35 every game, but if he can give him 10 to 15 points in the playoffs, that's all they really need from him. Let DeRozan, let Levine, let those guys get their buckets and just have Pat play good defense and contribute as the 4th or 5th option. That's really all they need from him. Trent Forrest got signed to a full-time contract right before the playoffs, so he'll be playing in the playoffs. Shout out to him. And we've already talked about Malik Beasley being a huge part of that Minnesota team, guy that can come in, hit 3-4 threes a game, give that team a boost.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's fun to watch those guys, and I'm extremely happy for them. I'm extremely happy. It's fun. They're entertaining guys. Definitely like Terrence Mann, man. I remember watching him this last was it last summer? Yeah, it was last summer, and watching him face off against the Mavs, and that was definitely a fun
It was a fun series. It was a really fun series.
I was in Dallas, so I was watching them not be so much of fans of Terrence Mann, but me having, I wasn't wearing FSU stuff, but there was garnet and gold on me, and they weren't too happy with me pulling for Terrence Mann at the bars, and I might have been drinking a little bit too much, but what's new, right? What's new?
I did see the comment asking if Isaac will ever be back. I know they announced like 5 weeks ago that he was going to be out for the rest of the season. I think there's some kind of setback in his hamstring or something like that. Yeah, so
I think he had a surgical procedure actually.
Yeah, so at this point, we'll see what he's like come preseason. Give him another 5 months to recover. I hope he can recover and get back to playing like the John Isaac we all know he is. But at the same time, Orlando's got so many guys that play that 3-4 role, and Franz Wagner, Chuma Okeke, and they've got a lot of guys that play that same kind of position. So even if he does come back, he may not get that much playing time. But at the same time, he signed to a big contract. I think he signed for $69 million a couple years ago.
He got a good extension like right before the injury.
Yeah, like right before the bubble. So we'll see. I also want to give shout out to Fianu Kabengele, who is hooping in the G League Finals right now. Had 18 points and 18 boards at halftime. So shout out my boy Fee.
Yeah,
needs to be on the roster. I don't know why he's not on an NBA roster right now. He's too talented.
Where's Balsa at?
Still in Serbia. Still on I think he's on Red Star. He's playing well there. He's playing really well, but
yikesies. Not
you wouldn't know the Serbian team he's on.
I mean, they have 2 really good professional development teams. It's Red Star, and I forget what the other one is. I'd have to look it up.
Wish him the luck. Don't worry.
Is Red Star the one that Jokic was on?
Probably.
Yeah.
They have 2 really good teams. I'd really have to ask my friend who's a scout to tell me.
Just random. I was seeing there's a Serbian team that like tries to overinflate people's stats to get them recognized with the NBA, and that's kind of what happened with Jokic, and then he got picked. And now they have a guy who they're doing the same thing with. Dude, his name is
Nikola Jovic.
Yeah, Jovic. Like it's one letter different. It's Jokic. That's Jokic, and then you have
Jovic.
Thank God you did it, dude.
Guys, we've really hit the crowd now.
Yeah, I know.
We're really keeping them entertained here at 10 o'clock about the different
There's
names
a
of the
podcast.
Serbian
We're here to
team.
talk.
We are here,
Listen, I've been
guys.
itching to talk basketball all week, so let me get my
Absolutely.
20 minutes, okay?
No. I thought it was funny. I'm here. I'm learning things every day. I don't know some of the names that you are talking about at all, but I'm learning. At least I'm here to listen.
Hey, I'm not segueing when y'all talking recruiting. Y'all say these names, I'm like,
Whoa, at least I'm interested in listening. You're just like, I'm here to listen.
I'm keeping an eye out for news, to be fair.
Well, can I
keep
drop
an
some
eye-
news? Can I drop
No,
some
no.
news for the late night crowd? The late night
No, you
crowd?
said
This is
keep
why we
an
try
eye
to
for
tell
news. That's
people to
what I
stick
said.
around. Stick around. QB1's currently with Marius Mims right now. We'll drop that in there just for the late night crowd that listen to this. I mean, none of the
Damn,
podcasts.
Gino
listeners
English?
look at that. Yeah, Gino English hanging out
That's
with
it.
Marius Mims tonight.
Now the Georgia boys are together, Tate and Mims.
Yeah, I wouldn't be
I will-
shocked if a lot of the QB room is with Amarius, but I do know I can say that Jordan Travis is spending some time, at least this evening. Don't know how long it'll last, but those guys have a little hanging out tonight.
Could
Good.
Gino English be your backup quarterback in 2022?
Oh Jesus!
I was gonna make a joke about it while y'all were talking about
Look
it.
good in the
One
spring
out of
game. Here
one
we
out
go.
of one, 20 yards and a rushing touchdown. You know, he had as many completions as AJ, more touchdowns than Jordan Travis. I see a lot to like in the guy.
Look at this. Look at this. Well, if you enjoy late night little nugs, we'll do them more at the end of the podcast. But you got to hit the like button, right? 81 likes. I thought we'd hit 100 likes before we got off, but we came so close. But yeah, before you guys leave, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe. We'll be going live next Thursday night at 8:30. If anything pops, if Amarius Mims decide to become a Seminole, then we will most likely do an instant reaction, or if I will do it by myself, no matter what. But we'll do an instant reaction if that does end up happening. But like we talked about earlier, Amarius Mims in town visited today. Plans on having a couple events tomorrow that he will be at, and then we will see. There's a photo shoot that I know is planned tomorrow, and the hotel is booked through Saturday. So we will give you guys the latest in the Discord. Make sure you guys are following us on Twitter at the Nole Game Day. We're also on Facebook and Instagram if you guys want to go follow over there. Definitely appreciate everybody hanging out with us this evening. This will be uploaded on the podcast. So if you guys are new here, we also upload it to the podcast, iTunes, Google Play, Spotify. It's all on there. So you guys can go listen to that if you don't want to see our faces anymore. I wouldn't blame you at all.
One more thing, shout out my boy Jared Lynn, grad assistant with FSU basketball, is cancer free today.
Oh, wow. That's great news.
Shout out my guy.
That is great news. That's a great way to end off the podcast there. That is awesome news. Wow. Really cool. All right, guys, let's end it off on the good news there. Everybody enjoy the rest of y'all's week and weekend, and we'll keep you guys updated. Enjoy the weekend. Peace.
Mama told me not to say a word. 17, 5, same